five-reel goals to gritty defense and epic saves, we're covering it all. So lace your skates up, grab your favorite jersey, and get ready to dive deep into the world of hockey. This is the five-hole where every shot counts and every story is a game changer. Let's drop the puck and get started.
Hey, good Sunday. I almost said Saturday morning. It's Sunday. Good Sunday morning here. My name is Brandon. This is Variety Sports Network. This is the five hole. I got Jerry, Aaron, and Brandon with me today. Got a full house for this week's episode. So hopefully you're all doing well out there. Get ready for some NFL Sunday stuff going on. But we're here to talk about some hockey. And the first thing I want to talk about, and Jerry, I ought to get your thoughts on this, is Alex Lafreniare's new 7-year contract. Have they officially signed that yet?
Yes.
I thought they did.
Yeah. Yep.
What's your thoughts on it, first off?
So I think it's a contract well spent. You know, the first couple of years of his career, he kind of came out here and, excuse me, he wasn't living up to 1-1, but hype, I guess might be the right word here. But sure. He also came into the league during a weird time. He wasn't a I think he was drafted in 2019. Correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron. And then his first season was the COVID season, so things got kind of messed up. And then after that, even after the post 2020 hockey season, the 2021 hockey season was just as crazy as far as like weird stuff happening. And I felt like there wasn't really a return to normalcy until 2022, which was, can be said to be his first full regular NHL season. And then After that, last year, we really saw him come into his own and fire up his play. He was amongst the leader of the Rangers. He was a big part of us going to the Eastern Conference Finals. And this year, he's hitting the ground running. He's ready to go. So I think locking him up for that price for that long is a bargain on both ends. Yeah, sure, maybe he could have got more money. But now if you look at the benefits for him is that he's going to be he's going to enter free agency when he's 30, I think, give or take. Yeah. And, I would love to have him back. I'm sure we'll see how things go. But that if he doesn't come back, that gives him the opportunity to still negotiate stuff in his prime and, get more money that way, get a second big contract. Or, also gives him, he still makes it's a decent amount of money. It's nothing, right. It's more than I make. So you can't really call it a discount. But, that's as far as I'm concerned, that's great. I'm happy to have him. The contract woes that I want to get tied up, which unfortunately we're probably not going to until next year, is the Igor situation. Yeah. Not to, make everything all about the Rangers as I always do, but that's the contract that I'm focused on. I think that man deserves a blank check and a Brinks truck and whatever nomenclature you want to use, pay the man that money.
That's fair. That's fair. We'd actually talked about that on one of the earlier, like the very first one. Was it the first or second one that we talked about? Because
I think it was the first one that you guys did.
Igor got his, or possibly was getting close to getting that contract signed, and then you had Swayman as well, and then gosh dang, Ottawa. What's his name?
Lance Olmark got his same deal pretty much as Swim, and then Ottinger
too,
which is actually even better for him because it's like 11 mil because there's no states actually adding all that stuff, so it's not the same as Swayman. He's getting like 11,
right?
So yeah, it's driving up. So he's probably getting like 12 mil. But yes, to Jerry's point, Lafreniere is actually a COVID baby. He got drafted in COVID.
Yeah,
I got it right. How about that?
It seems like it's a good signing for New York. It seems like they're wanting to keep a good core together. As Aaron mentioned on one of the previous episodes too, that they're like the Rangers themselves are getting older, so having to keep their core, their younger core together is going to be a big thing for them, and not having to fall back and then have to rebuild and fall back and have to rebuild type of deal.
So I also wouldn't be surprised if he finds himself wearing a C at some point, like down the road. I mean, I personally want Kreider to get it, but I think after, like you said before, that the main core is aging and they're not going to be around here forever. I would say maybe we have 3 or 4 more years at most.
Right.
But I think Lav's going to be here for a while, and I think after all that, when the reset comes, when and they put out the open letter to the fan base like they did in whatever it was, 2017, 2018, I think he'll find himself wearing a C.
Right.
We'll see.
Yeah. There was another signing this week too, and it was Vegas Golden Knight guy. It was Shea Theodore. Basically got like
good
this
defenseman.
same type of contract. It's like a 7-year. Barney, you got to be quiet. Like a 7-year, 57 or $55 million deal, something like that as well. Brandon, being a Western Conference guy on West Coast, what kind of impact does this make for Vegas?
I mean, you got a guy that's been in the league for a few years now. I mean, granted, he had a little bit of last year or the season before that where he was on the IR. But, I mean, back having him now to having him healthy. And, I mean, he's been a solid blue liner since he's been in the league. And, I mean, you got him on a team like Vegas where you have so many talented players around you. It's going to be really good to have Shea Theodore, who's especially, I mean, I don't know how that team's going to be with bringing in young players because their development system at the moment is not the greatest. They just want to get the greatest players that they can at the time just to try to see how many cup runs they can get. Right. But eventually that ideal is going to more or less kind of fade out because the money is just not going to be there for the big guys, and they're going to need veteran players like Shea Theodore, Alex Lafreniare, Eichel, Hanifin. I mean, you go down the list, you can say all the different players that Vegas has, but I think whenever they do start getting young talent, Shea Theodore is going to be definitely a guy that they're want to have in a locker room to be able to coach up whatever players that they have. And even the guys in the locker room now, I feel like he's a really good presence in the locker room. So good for Vegas to have him locked up for a good amount of years now, but it sucks to have him in Vegas and not in St. Louis or some other place because I'd rather have him in St. Louis.
Well, I mean, I'm not, like I said, not gonna toot Doug Armstrong's horn too much, but the Philip Broberg, Dylan Holloway offer sheet thing has been working out tremendously so far. So yes. Can't complain too much about things. But you see all these guys getting, these long-term contracts and whatnot. We saw it last year with a couple of guys too. Like, is this how many? I mean, I'm curious how many of these guys actually fulfill, the 7, 8, 6-year contracts that they're given. I mean, you'd have to think at some point organizations are going to be like, no, like we're not going to do that. We see too much in the tendencies of those guys not filling out contracts of the 6, 7, 8 years that we're just not going to do that anymore. Aaron, do you think that's like something that organizations think about?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're looking at it right now with the Trouba situations. I guess the $8 mil. I've seen it too many times where dudes have been getting bought out and they have the dead salary cap. So they probably – I'm thinking like the NBA does it where they sign these like big contracts, but they have it where they can just dump it off like later on, like in the years.
Yeah.
So it's looking like with the NHL, like whatever they give you is like pretty much whatever they give. And I think the bad thing with the NHL is they do too many no movement, no trade clauses, which kind of hurts organizations even more because I didn't even realize that we couldn't like cut deals, the NFL, they'll like restructure and do all anything like that. I didn't realize the NHL never did that. I could have swore they did, but I think that's what kind of hurts in contracts too. So I don't know if they could bring that up in like a CBA, which would help the owners, not the players. But yeah, it's interesting that they do it like this, like with the 7.6 or 8 or 12 or however they want to do it. But I think inside the deals, I think they need to work on it better to help both sides, player and team.
Right. Jerry, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, like Aaron said, we've seen so many of these contracts just kind of like, again, just my frame of reference, you look back to like the Rick Nashers or the
Brad Richards.
I was gonna say, who was the defenseman we stole from you guys? That's from Rod. He's from New York. Didn't work out. Shattenkirk. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Contracts like that where they get played, but then it's kind of, I felt what we're seeing right now, though. I feel like these contracts are going to the right type of people. When the Brad Richards and the Kevin Shattenkirks get those 8 years for a boatload of money, they're kind of not well past their prime, but towards the back end of their prime. Like I was talking about with Laugh, with that when he turns 30, he's going to be a free agent. That's when those 8-year contracts, I feel like, were coming into play. Now when 23, 25-year-olds are getting 8-year contracts, they're going to be that's perfectly fine. That's going to be through the prime of the career. And I feel like you'll see them now played out more, not healthily, but get each side getting their money's worth. I feel like on top of that too, I could be wrong, but I keep hearing the salary cap's going to go up, something along those lines. The ESPN TV deal had to do wonders for, the NHLPA as far as the revenue and all that stuff goes to give these people more money to bring in. So if you got it, smoke them if you got it. Spend that money while you can and give it to the people who are well worth. I think these people are worth those contracts, but, it's always going to be – you hear it now again, going back to that Igor stuff, you hear it with an NBA player would have scoffed at that, or this is nothing compared to what the Major League Baseball can do and all that stuff. All right, hockey's in a different realm of, contract negotiations, and it always has been. We've always been the lowest paid professional sports league, I believe, next to lacrosse or whatever, but as far as the 4 major ones go, so I think it's good. I think it's good to see because you want to see these guys get paid. You want to see more revenue coming into the league, and this is I think it's good for the growth of the game, and I think it's gonna keep things more interesting. But we'll see how all this stuff works out, and 7 years from now when these guys are getting buyed out because it's just been a horrific stint. I'll eat my words, but until then,
yeah, it's just something that came thought process of maybe teams do regret in some ways of giving some of these guys 7-8 year contracts and them not only going 5 years and still being stuck with some of the money that they have to deal with. And I know they work out things with teams we'll see the three-way trades with like Minnesota, for example, with the Ryan O'Reilly thing. They just took on a bunch of the cap from that, some of those contracts, just things like that. But
think of the dry style though. He's getting 14 mil a season. He's gonna be 37 on his last year on his deal, and then you have people like Darnell Nurse who are making 9 to 11 mil, and he's just been nothing ever since he signed that deal.
Right. Yeah. That's fair. Moving forward here a little bit. Any surprises? So we're about 3 weeks into the NHL season or so, give or take 3 weeks. The Winnipeg Jets, 8-0 on the season so far. They've allowed only 16 goals. They've scored 36, so they're a plus 20 goal differential right now. 16 points, first in the NHL. Brendan, are you surprised by this?
No, frankly, I kind of, after seeing the last couple of years of how Winnipeg was playing, and even after last year, I figured that they were going to kind of come out with a strong start. To see them going 8-0 to start the season, it doesn't really surprise me all much. There's a few other teams in the league that have kind of surprised me a little bit more, but I'm sure we're going to be talking about them here in a little bit. But it sucks to see Winnipeg winning as much as they are with them being in the Central. But for them to have a good start, good for them.
Yeah, and I say it's not even that they beat some really good teams over the last week or so. In St. Louis and in Seattle and in Calgary last night. Jerry, what do you think on the Winnipeg Jets right now?
I didn't see this coming. You saw last year that they had a pretty solid, they made they were a playoff team last year, and they've always, I felt like for the most part, since they got up there, they've been fielding pretty decent teams. They've been at the bottom of the barrel probably only a handful of times. Yeah. But to start your season off 8-0, that's, I mean, I'm coming from a conference where we don't really, they're a conference rival with you guys, so you run into them a lot more. This means a lot more to you guys than it does for me. But I didn't even know this was going on up there. So to see this happening right now, that's pretty solid. And then if you look at the goalie stats, like the league leaders for goalies, Hellebuck is second in goals against. He's second in save percent average, and he's first in shutouts. He only has one shutout, but still, he's again, this kind of goalies kind of tend to be it's news to nobody. But goalies tend to be the back. He's going to continue playing like this throughout the season. I think they have a real shot. It's October, but they have a real shot at the President's Trophy if they keep this up for the next 6 months. We'll see what happens, though. It's a long season.
They do have a good chance at it, but at the same time, this is a team that relies so heavily on Hellebuck throughout the regular season. By the time they get to the playoffs, you always see them crumble because Hellebuck is just tired of playing 82 games, if not 78 games, where they have their backup come in for a few games throughout the season. They'll give him a little bit of a reprieve, but then you see him just letting in everything in the postseason, and it just looks like he's just worn down so much. And we've seen that year after year after year, which is not news to me.
Right. Well, that's what I was about to say. Winnipeg typically has a relatively good regular season, but once they get to the playoffs, they don't have a whole bunch to show for. So I don't, maybe this is something that helps repel them. I would imagine, unless they have a complete absolute collapse, they should be a playoff team this year. I unrealistically see how that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You start the season 8-0, you got 16 points in 8. That's a heck of a start to the season. You're in a very tough I wouldn't say Western Conference right now. It's more of like just the Central Division itself. It seems to be one of the tougher divisions every year, realistically. But again, is this something that, Aaron, do you think Winnipeg can keep up with throughout the year? Do you think they'll fall off at some point?
They're looking like the Vancouver Canucks from last year. We saw the same thing. They were just straight dominating. I think they finished second in the West last year. So Winnipeg has a pretty good two lines. I like Hellebuck, but again, like you guys keep saying, he does get pretty much like wind down to the end of the regular season. When we saw him in the playoffs last year, just get annihilated by Colorado. So, I'm just looking at it right here. I still think Dallas is going to take the Central, even though Winnipeg's is at their star of 8-0, just because the Stars, I feel like, are just way better than them. Right. But I wouldn't be surprised if they were between the 1 and 3 in the Central. So, I think that's pretty good in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Look at another team that started out really, really, really kind of, or I wouldn't say really hot, but on a higher note. Let's not talk about the Blues. Talking about the Calgary Flames.
I thought you were going to say the Minnesota Wild.
Oh, I don't. Yeah. Well, no, we're not talking about goal to goal again. We had enough of that last week. No goalie goal stuff this week. The Flames are now 5-2-1 with 11 points on the season. After that, 4-0. Did they have 4-0 start? That's what it was.
Yeah,
on that order. So what should just? Are you surprised that the Flames are having the little bit of success that they're having after the year that they had last year, Jerry?
No, and I'll tell you why, and it's going to make no sense, but it also might make a little sense. With the Johnny Gaudreau type deal, I know he hasn't been in Calgary now for a couple of years, but he was a Calgary boy, and we saw when all that stuff happened. I haven't had a chance to speak about it on this podcast, but when all that stuff happened, like, Calgary showed out. And I know he kind of left and it was a whole thing and all that stuff, but that's still their guy. They drafted him when he was like 19 or however old. He was a kid when they got him, and like he got raised in Calgary and whatnot. And I think they're kind of using that momentum to their a benefit, I guess would be the right word to use here. And again, I know it wasn't his team and all that stuff, but just to use that, riding that high, the energy and the fans and all that stuff, bringing the heat, they paid their own tributes, they did all that stuff. And not to mention, they've been kind of, at the bottom of the barrel now for a while. Ever since that core got broken up, they've done absolutely nothing. They've been a bottom 5 team in the league now for about 4 or 5 years. So I think, they've had plenty of time to build their farm system, get everything in order. And now to come out here and, have a little bit of sustained success early on in the season, not too shocking. That key word, though, is sustain. I don't know if that's necessarily going to carry over. We've seen many times past, like Coyotes, for example, got off to a crazy hot start last year and then just tanked from there on down. It's kind of the early season success is great coming from a team who's currently 6-1 or 7-1 after last night, but it doesn't translate to what matters in April. So we'll see. The barometer here is the All-Star break. If Calgary's where they are, if they're able to stay where they are kind of right now through the All-Star break, I think they'll be in great shape. And I think it's safe to say that the franchise will be back, but that's neither here nor there. They also have to, what do they call that rival up there with the Battle of Alberta?
Yeah.
So the battle, they have to worry about that. And that's, there's no reason why the Oilers can't get back to the Stanley Cup this year. So to have them kind of on your back at all times can be dangerous for them. But if they can walk out there, would say they probably play each other 4 or 5 times a year. If they can win 2 or 3 of those, I think they'll be in great shape. I think that's going to prove that they were able to take the next step up from where they were in the basement.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Speaking of those Edmonton Oilers, the 3-4-1 on the year, 7 points so far. Not so great of a start to the season, but not gonna hold them down too much because it happened last year. Fire the coach. I don't think that's gonna happen this year. They ended up in the Stanley Cup Finals. Brandon, you wouldn't say surprised. A little. What was your questions with the Edmonton Oilers right now?
Honestly, my big question for Edmonton, obviously they have a lot of the talent that they have already for the skaters that they have, but the big question I have is goaltending for Edmonton, because you've seen Stuart Skinner being out there for a few games, and he's kind of laid an egg a little bit for the most part until he had a shutout a few nights ago. But I mean, other than that, you have Picard, who's has a couple wins himself, and other than that, I mean, you got 2 guys that are kind of inconsistent at the moment. They're not really, I guess, they're not really seeing the puck all that great, I guess, to start the season out. Skinner, I mean, yeah, he's had that one real good game where he was able to get a shutout for. But other than that, I mean, a little bit can be contended to the defense or just the team up in front of you, just not getting the puck out or whatever kind of excuse you want to show for the team. But I just think if Edmonton wants to get going on the right direction, they're going to want to get some sort of consistency going a little bit more with their goaltending, because if they're just going to continue the season with how their goaltending is going right now, it's going to be a lot more of a losing season, I feel like.
Yeah. So he's Stuart Skinner right now. It's 6 games played. He's 2-1. It's a 3.06 goals against, and then a 0.890 save percentage so far on this season. So not great start, but not an awful start at the same time. And then you have the other guy is with Picard right there, 3.228 goals against as well. I mean, do you think this is a team that can recover from the slower start to the season, Aaron?
I mean, Zach Hyman, the Pyman, hasn't really done much, and that was a 50-goal score there. I think he'll get his groove, but he's struggling hardcore. Victor Arvidsson's been a pretty good pickup from them from LA when they signed him. Jeff Skinner is Jeff Skinner. We all know who he is, but I just think the offense just needs to pick it up. I think it's a slow start for him. Stuart Skinner is human again. This is why you pay your top goalies. This is why places like Edmonton don't have any good goalies. But I think it's just the offense needs to pick it up. Connor McDavid can't do everything. We see that he can do everything, but he shouldn't, especially with the pieces that they assembled. But I think losing certain key guys from free agency, a lot from that Stanley Cup team, I think is kind of hurting them a little bit. But, I mean, again, still early in the season. We saw what happened last year. They were literally the second worst team last year at this point behind the Sharks, and they went to the Cup. So what do we know?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Is there any other team in the Western, before we jump over to the Eastern Conference, is there any other team in the West that's just kind of a shocker to you, Jerry? And Brandon, I'll get to you in a minute.
Yeah. Let's see. I guess I feel what's more shocking to me is the disparity in numbers of games played and all that. Like, I guess the Canucks kind of fallen down. They've only played 7 games.
Yeah.
But for them to be 4th in the Pacific right now is kind of a little like, what happened there? They kind of really I feel like they kind of really fell off.
No Demko.
Yeah, that's true. Sharks are on a shark. I'm just
the
Oilers are. I didn't realize the Oilers are 7th in the Pacific too. What's going on there?
Yeah,
that's kind of crazy. But no, I mean it kind of looks minus the Canucks and the Oilers falling from grace there, and the Flames kind of being up top in 3rd place. Everything's kind of, I feel like, where it should be. Actually, no, that's not true. You know who my biggest shock in the Western Conference is right now, playing how they're playing? The Colorado Avalanche. And I understand that I understand that they, you want to talk about an aging core. I feel like them, but also not really. Like it's weird to me because these guys aren't. How old's Nate McKinnon? 29? 30,
like
31 maybe.
I want to say he's right around that, 28 to 30 range.
To say that these guys are aging when Ovechkin's almost 40, scoring night in and night out, like it's kind of crazy to me. Like it's just. I think, and one of my buddies from work is a Colorado Avalanche fan, and every game because I told him, like, yo, you guys got a good goalie in Georgiev, because that was my guy in the Rangers, and he always texts me like, dude, this guy sucks. What's going on? I guess you can kind of blame their problems on him if you want to blame anybody, but it's just kind of, I don't know. It's shocked to see a team be dominant for that long and then just fall off this hard. But again, as I've been saying all show long, it's literally only October 27th. We have a long season to go. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, they have won 4 straight. The Colorado Avalanche have, so they're now 4-4 and 0 on the year with 8 points. So they're right there I would say right there in the mix of things now. Only being 2 points behind St. Louis for that, I guess, a wild card spot technically at the moment.
I thought Chicago was going to be better with all those acquisitions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, they could have been a 2-6-1, 5 points on the year. They were a team that I thought could surprise people a little bit. I thought I'm not saying that they shouldn't be better. It could be better, because they definitely have some of the guys, and they have Bertuzzi now and Berdard, and some of the younger talent that they do have. But I think a lot of their issues is the same thing that's happened in Edmonton, is they don't really have a significant goaltender to keep them in games right now.
I think Peter Mrazek's not too bad. Yeah. I just think last year he was getting beat up because it was literally a glorified AHL team. But I mean, if you look at their defense, though, it's not really that bad. I think, did Alec Martinez get hurt at any point, or?
I can find out. I mean, they've allowed 31 goals on the season so far.
Oh, okay. I mean, Seth Jones, he's all right, but I mean, they put a lot of good goons and stuff around Connor Bedard. But I think now he's starting to get his rhythm, so maybe it'll change. But I mean, people forget Taylor Hall's on this team too, and this guy was pretty good for New Jersey and Boston, and I think he was at Buffalo for just a wee bit. But yeah, I mean, they have a pretty solid team. But I know a lot of these guys are going to get traded at the deadline, so I figured help out their stock by winning some games.
He's only put so Alex Martinez has only played four games this year. His last game was October 15th, so he must have
Oh yeah, he must have hurt.
gotten hurt, or they're just sitting him. One of the two. Healthy scratch him.
Mm.
That's the only other thing I could think of. Trying to look here, see what their schedule looks like next couple games, and they don't have it. I mean, they play Colorado on Monday, and then they're are at San Jose on Thursday, and then at the Kings. So they got a nice little West Coast trip coming up. The Chicago Blackhawks do. Brandon, is there any Western Conference team that has you surprised right now?
Aside from Colorado, because I didn't even think about them whenever Jerry brought them up, but I mean they are riddled with injuries. It seems like they have been like that for the last consecutive couple years, yeah. But the team that really surprised me in the West so far is Nashville. And after all the off-season signings, I mean, you brought in Marshall Stolt, you brought in Stamkos, you brought in a few other players on top of already having players like Ryan O'Reilly, Forsberg, Roman Yossi. I mean, you got a pretty decent club there, and to have all the offseason acquisitions, and I mean, people can say that you got a new team, you got to have time to build the chemistry up and everything. I mean, if you're as good of a player and you're as bring in some of these players that you're going to build that chemistry quick because you're literally with these guys almost every single day.
Yeah.
And I mean, to see the team coming out, I think they're on a 2-5-1 record so far at the beginning of the season. And I mean, they just got their second win, I think, the other night or last night. I don't know how they did last night, to be honest, but that to me is just, I mean, they have so many offseason acquisitions that are decent, but good players, and to have a sub 500 record, I would have thought they would have been a little bit closer to 500, if not a little bit over. That's just me. I don't know if you guys feel any different.
Yeah. Right. They beat the Columbus Blue Jackets last night 4-3 in overtime to pick up their third win of the season. So they're 3-5-0, 6 points on the year. I think me and Aaron talked about the Predators last episode. Was it last episode? I think it was.
Yeah.
And Aaron brought up the fact that maybe they just haven't gelled yet. Like maybe so it's a lot of experienced players that you bring in. So sometimes things like that take a little bit of time to get going. So maybe that's the issue with Nashville, and they're just trying to figure things out, and what kind of role each guy is going to have, because it's a lot of guys who were leaders on the teams they were on. Stamkos was a captain. Marshall Stolt was one of the leaders in the locker room over in Vegas too, and you still got Ryan O'Reilly, who's the captain in St. Louis as well. So you got a lot of guys who have had that type of leadership role at one point in time, and where's it all going to fit? Like, you got to figure out the pieces to the puzzle and get them in the right spots.
Plus, Saros was hurt for a good amount last year too, so he's probably just getting into his groove. But I mean, yeah, 3 straight starting off beating up the Bruins. They felt that pressure though, being 0-5. I think that pressure was just really just kind of like, I don't know how to describe it, but the fact that they got 3 straight, they're going to keep winning. I think that's going to happen just because now, like, all right, cool, got 3-game winning streak. Let's just start dominating. I mean, Stamkos is kind of a surprise to me because he only has the 1 goal, which I think I don't know, did he score that? Was that against? I think it was against the Stars, but I could be wrong. But at 8 games, he only has 1 goal, and that's it. That's kind of a cause for concern. But I think he might just be in a little slump himself.
Yeah. So they travel to Tampa Bay Monday, and then they are at home against Edmonton, which should be, I wouldn't say should be, could be a winnable game for the Nashville Predators. And they're home against Colorado and then home against LA before they go back on the road to Washington for back-to-backs against Washington and Florida, which might not be the easiest back-to-back games of your season so far. Let's jump over to the Eastern Conference. So, and I'll start with this. My shocker. I wouldn't say shocker. Team that I didn't expect to be where they are right now is the Washington Capitals.
Mm-hmm.
At 5-2-0 at 10 points. I watched their game against who did they play the other night? It was
Flyers.
The Flyers game. They look like a pretty solid team. Like they look well put together. Like they could be a team to be a little bit of a threat in the Eastern Conference this year. Jerry, what are your thoughts on the Capitals?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see it. I'm pushing for, you mean, actually, let me rephrase it. You don't love to see it because they are a conference rival for me, but
right.
I am a big proponent of the countdown. I want to see Ovi crush that record, and I think on pace for him to do it this year. He's only, I think 43 away. Last 40. I checked, it was 4. It's 40 now. Okay, yeah. So there we go. Yep. I think given the start he's off to this year compared to what he was doing last year, I think 40 goals in 5 months' time is more than obtainable for Alex Ovechkin. I want to see this happen. I'm rooting for this to happen. That's it. That's the extent of me rooting for the Capitals. At the end of the day, they are a conference rival, like I mentioned. But it's good to see them back in the fold because you want to talk about an aging core. They're suffering from that. I got 2 surprises, both in the Met. Actually, 3. Number 1 being the Bruins in the Atlantic. I guess it's still early. They're probably still trying to figure things out. I know they had their fair share of drama in the offseason, so they're probably still, coming down from that high. But I'm certain that they'll be able to right the ship, especially when you have a team like the Sabres in 3rd place right now. As I mentioned, shitty teams tend to start off hot and then plateau very early. I think that's exactly what's going to happen to the Buffalo Sabres, as it's been happening notoriously for them for the past couple seasons. But then going down to the Met, you have the Penguins in 7th, which, again, that aging core, things might be over for them. I know they just re-upped Sid, but, Malkin's up there. Kunitz is up there. Like, everywhere you look at the Pittsburgh, that like people want to say that the Colorado Avalanche is aging and things aren't the same. The Pittsburgh Penguins. That's an over 40 men's league hockey team right there. Yeah. That's what they are. So there's that aspect of things, and then the Devils are off to somewhat of a hot start. I hate the Devils, but to see them not make the playoffs last year and then get off to where they are right now, being second in the Met, right behind yours truly. I didn't see that. I thought they were going to be a bottom of the barrel team again. And then also the Flyers being in dead last, you could say you expected it, but I did think that they started to turn things around towards the helm. I thought they were building, and I thought they'd be a lot better, but to see them down there, I'm a little shocked about.
Yeah, I will say that, with your thing on the Devils, they have played 11 games already this year, which is, more than a good.
That's what I'm talking about with the gameplay disparities. It's not that much in hindsight. It's like 3 to 4 at most, but that's that's a significant amount of games.
When you
some teams only played 7, other teams have played 12. Like it's like, whoa, what's going on?
Yeah, so you look at the Devils who played 11 games, and you got Carolina who's sitting right behind them with 10 points. Who are 5-2. We've only played 7 games so far this season. Like just that doesn't make any. It doesn't make any sense. I know scheduling stuff is hectic and can be a lot, but I mean, are the Devils actually, are we worried about the Devils at 5-4, 5-4-2?
Sheldon's head coach, so no. He's a regular season guy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not even that. They're barely a 500 team right now.
Yeah.
So.
And they had a lot of upgrades too on pretty much everything.
Yeah. I didn't realize how not so great the Atlantic Division is this year. Right now, at least. So far. You got Buffalo at 4-4, Toronto at 4-4, Boston at 4-4-1, Ottawa's 4-3, which I don't know if this is bad or good.
I think Ottawa 4-3 is good.
And you got Detroit at 4-4, and then Montreal at 3-4-1, who got a win over St. Louis last night. 5-2.
Jeez. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, okay.
You want to talk about glorified AHL teams?
Yeah. Is the Atlantic just tougher than we think, or is it just not good?
I don't think it's tough. I think it's just not good. I mean, you have the Panthers in there, but that's really it. The Lightning's falling off. I know that it's hard to say that when they're in second place in the conference, but the Lightning's not what they were when they were on their run of dominance. Sabres are going to you have the Sabres in there. The Leafs stink. We all know that. The Senators, I mean, I feel like the friskiest team in the Atlantic right now is the Detroit Red Wings. I'd be on the lookout for the Red Wings. They might make some noise come the end of the season.
Aaron's like, no Red Wings, no Red Wings. Why is that? Why is that, Aaron? Why don't you think you're not favorable of Red Wings this year?
I mean, they tried last year and they didn't make it over Washington. I think if you don't make it over Washington from last year, it's just not that good. I know they have Jerry's guy and Patrick Kane and another one.
Two of my guys. Yep, two of my guys.
Yeah, two of them on the same line, which is okay. But I mean, the goaltending is sus. I get it. They have Leinen, who isn't too bad, but they also have Cantalva, who's like 38. He's definitely way overdue just to retire. I don't know. I just feel like Yzerman has these pieces, and he's been there since like 2019, and nothing's really shown for it, except for the two signings that we talked about last week.
Mm-hmm.
And they haven't been in the playoffs in like 8 years.
Yeah.
This is like the most unrealistic thing in Detroit that we've ever seen, especially from the teams that they've had in the past. So I don't know. I just feel like they have these pieces. It's just not going anywhere. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It makes sense.
But,
they should be in a better spot than they are. Is what you're saying.
Yeah, but shout out to Shea Pinto though. I mean, the guy was gambling last year. Has 50 game suspension, and now he's got BetMGM or Bet365 on his helmet now for Ottawa. So, sheesh.
I hate that. I hate that. What's it called? Hypocrisy. I'm not a fan of that. It's you be in or be out.
Right.
Don't bet on what you're playing in, obviously, but if you want to bet. You want to bet on NFL football while you're playing hockey, sure. Whatever. But like, I think leagues should not be in bed with the sports books like in the slightest.
No, it doesn't make any sense. You suspend guys for gambling, regularly across all leagues. But you're gonna be like, oh, like our big main core sponsor is FanDuel or anything like that. Like no, like you can't. Like that's it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Don't ask me how. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. Brandon, anybody in the Eastern Conference that has you just kind of like, maybe they're not so good, or maybe they're.
I would say probably Washington would probably has me kind of a little bit of a surprise. Yeah, I mean, seeing them after the last few years of seeing them kind of lower half of the Metro and not really doing as good, and seeing them kind of coming out a little bit stronger this season is kind of a little bit of a surprise for me. Tampa is a little bit. I mean, I know. Jerry was talking about Tampa a little bit ago, but I mean that's a team too that we're going to talk about aging cores a little bit as well. I mean, you got Kucherov, you got Hedman, Hagel, Vasilevsky. I think he's a little bit on the younger side, but I mean all those guys. I think they're like early to mid 30s. I think, and eventually you're going to have to start looking at development and bringing guys in. I mean, they probably already are, but at the same time, they're going to really, over the next probably season or two, I have a feeling you're going to really start seeing that Lightning team really starting to just degress and seeing them playing probably a lot not as good hockey in the coming years, I imagine.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, you brought up the Washington Capitals, which seems to be a going thing so far. So they actually had won 5 straight games up into last night. They lost. They were shut out by the Tampa Bay Lightning of all teams to be talking about. But they have wins against Vegas, Dallas, New Jersey, and then 2 wins against Philadelphia, with another loss against the Devils. and then they play the Rangers in Montreal this coming week. I mean, they should. I mean, are they a playoff team? Are the Washington Capitals a playoff team, Jerry?
Wild card.
So it's still a playoff, but it's still a playoff team.
Yeah. But skin of their. I think they're gonna be in the hunt. I think for the remainder of the season. They made it last year.
Mm-hmm.
They got swept by the Rangers, but I think they might find themselves in a similar position this year because, like it or not, I think the Mets gonna come down to the Rangers and the Canes as it always does. You have the Islanders in there who could be frisky. They could figure it out. My dad's rolling over on his couch right now, and me saying that. And then I think the Devils in the mix too kind of shake things up. So I think it's going to be somewhat of a competitive division, but there's no reason why they wouldn't be able to sneak in. I think.
Sure, yeah, that makes. I mean, yeah, that's fair. Aaron, any final thoughts on the Eastern Conference?
Yeah, over under when Mitch Marner cries because he can't handle Craig Berube style.
So, last night, fun fact.
Oh, it did happen? Oh, here
well, no. Dougie, the best GM in the NHL, Armstrong, was at the Bruins Leafs game last night scouting. So,
interesting.
Yeah, a little Mitch Marner in St. Louis.
He would compliment Kyrou a lot because I feel like those two have very similar play styles.
Yeah, I just don't know if we talked about in the chat the other day or just the other day, Brandon's in it as well. We talked about Trevor Zegras and how he's not happy in Anaheim, and I don't blame him because outside of their uniforms, they are a not so great hockey club.
The away uniforms are hideous.
The away ones don't look great. But the home ones,
home ones are nice.
Uniforms look fantastic. There's just a lot of orange on them. A lot of orange on the away ones. Like you
just bring back the purple a little bit. Like I think they still can. I think they were talking about because Utah has somewhat. I'm like, no, you should be all right. They don't. Really
I think Disney technically owns them.
Hey Brandon, who was the other? There was I think 3 or 4 names on that list that I sent you. Who was the other one? There was one other one that I was more intrigued about than Zegras. I can't remember what his name is. I can't pull it up right now, but there was. No, it wasn't Vetrano. I don't think Vetrano was on that list.
Capo Caco. Yeah.
Yes, Capo Caco was on that list, and I figured, he's out in New York with you guys, I believe, right now.
Yep.
Whenever I saw his name on that list, I was like, ooh, this could be somebody that could possibly be looking good in a Blues uniform at some point or another.
Yeah, but here's my thing too is he's I don't want to make it sound bad, but he's just another Kasperi, not Kapanen. Who's the other guy I'm thinking of that the Blues signed or that the Blues traded for, and then I don't think he's with them anymore. He's from Pittsburgh. No, he's from Pittsburgh, or he was at Pittsburgh.
Noah Chari?
No, gosh dang it, I can't think of his name now. He's this big
Hayes,
goal scorer and whatnot, and
oh yeah, maybe he's talking about Kevin Hayes.
No, it's he's a younger kid. Was he in Detroit too?
Now you got me scratching. I can't think of it now.
Yeah.
Whenever it said Pittsburgh, the only 2 names I figured that are associated with Pittsburgh at the moment are Noah Chari and Kevin Hayes. But if you're saying bringing Detroit into the mix, that could be a lot of names.
Yeah. Hold on. I'm going to find it just a second.
The Detroit Blue Wings?
Yeah, the Detroit Blue Wings. That's not who I'm looking for. Maybe it is.
I mean, they thought Kevin Hayes would come in and be a good goal scorer for the Blues, and he laid an egg in his first season and found his way over to Pittsburgh.
He was only here for a little while. He wasn't. I mean, it wasn't. Oh, Jacob Vrana. That's who I'm thinking of. I feel like
the
that
glorified AHL player.
I feel like that's and again, it's the Blues being like, hey, let's go get this guy for cheap because he hasn't had a huge amount of success in the NHL like everybody thought he was going to. So let's go get him for cheap and try to fix him, try to turn him around and whatnot. I think that we kind of the same style. Like if you're going to go out and make a trade for a forward that you don't really need because you have guys.
Yeah.
To be honest.
And if you're a team like the Blues that's trying to develop within, then I don't see why you would go out and make this kind of move anyway.
Well, it's just a panic thing because Robert Thomas is out for 6 weeks. That's all it is.
Yeah, 6 weeks. I mean, they proved it was against a team like Toronto, but still, I mean, you won 5-1 or 5-2 against them, and then again, you come out the very following 2 nights later, and you lose to Montreal.
Yeah.
So I don't really know if that's a fair argument.
But I mean, at the same time, like it doesn't. You got guys. If you're gonna do anything, you bring Dvorsky in and let him just get his feet wet in the NHL. Get his feet wet in the NHL for a couple weeks and then back down.
I don't know if it would be a good move for Dvorsky. I could see it maybe for Zach Dean or somebody or some of the other players that they have in the development right now. I mean, I know Zach Dean, he's had time up with the Blues and maybe giving him maybe a couple weeks of, hey, let's come up, see what your development's like and see where things can go. But other than that, I think you just let the famous phrase, I think you just keep Dvorsky down there and let him cook for a little bit longer.
Yeah. And that's fair too. I mean, I'm not going to say no to that either because that's what they've been doing. And I think he's going to be a heck of an NHL player whenever he does get to the league from the sounds of it. So it'll be fun to watch. It'll be fun to watch Dalibor when he actually gets a good amount of playing time and isn't up here for, 5-6 games and then sent back down, a healthy scratch for, a couple games too.
Sure.
Any final thoughts on the Rangers or Rangers upcoming, I guess, bouts, Jerry or Aaron?
Wagon. That's it.
Yeah.
Wagon. Look fantastic. We on our Ranger show, some people were acting like the sky was falling because we lost to the defending Cup champions. We didn't look good in that game, understandably, but I think our next game is on Tuesday night against the
Capitals. Yeah,
the Capitals. I think that's going to be a good barometer. They're a good, as we talked about, they're a good team playing right now. And then after that, things kind of get a little bit easy for us. We see the currently 8-0 Winnipeg Jets on November 12th, my sister's birthday. That should be an interesting game, so it's going to kind of come and go. We'll see how things go, but I think this success, again, the script is written. It's been written for the past couple of years. We're going to be hot until Thanksgiving. Then we're going to skid through the All-Star break, and then we're going to come back from the All-Star break with a vengeance and, maybe make another run of the President's Trophy. So we'll see what happens. I expect things to be very similar to how they were last year, just hopefully this time with a standing at the mountaintop, but we'll see what happens.
That's fair. I gave my Stanley Cup prediction was Rangers Kings.
Hell yeah.
So
another rematch. I'll take that.
Yeah. Aaron's down here shaking. Hey, the Kings are second in the Pacific now, 12 points, Aaron.
It's not that. It's just like now the last 2 years, everything's been about for at least the Rangers side.
Historic.
This happened 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So this happened 10 years ago. It's jeez. Can we just play hockey and just win some games?
And Alex Martinez buries it into the net.
That's not funny. That's not funny.
But realistic. I mean, that's one of those finals games that just kind of it gets stuck in your. And even not as a Rangers fan, I couldn't imagine what it's like. But to constantly have that even in my head as a Blues fan, dang, so like.
Oh, what about those 2 years in the playoffs where we went up against Chicago, came out winning 2 games to nothing, and then I think we ended up losing, I think, in 6.
One of those was it bullshit? Was it Chicago both years, or was it? I think
Yeah,
one of them was
Chicago
LA.
both years.
I thought one of them was LA.
It might have been LA, but I distinctly remember the 1 year that we went against Chicago. We had the one game I think we won in regular time, and then the other game we won in double overtime. And then just from there, it just seemed like it was downhill slide for the Blues in that series. And it was just, that was a series that I was just like, oh.
Yeah. It just stabbed me right here. Aaron, any final thoughts on the Rangers, upcoming schedule, upcoming games?
Not really. Just pretty much just keep it one game at a time. Don't go too crazy. Pretty much there's going to be a skid that's going to happen. I don't care for the President's Trophy winner this year. I don't care about that.
I don't want it. There's no reason to want it.
Yeah, I'd rather be first in the Metro and then have the President's Trophy. So that doesn't matter to me. I think we just need to stay consistent with our third and fourth lines. Our third line has just been amazing so far this year. So fingers crossed on a certain center. I won't name just because he's had some bad luck. And other than that, hopefully they figure out the Matt Rempe situation. Just because he was sent down, which is fine.
Yeah.
And it's not getting a lot of ice time, but it's just like, what are we doing with it? And last, just hats off to Edstrom.
Mm-hmm.
He improved dramatically over last season on the fourth line wing, and he's been great with that fourth line with Sam Carrick.
Yeah, you know why he improved drastically? Because he spent some time in Hartford. Let Rempe do the same thing, and then he'll be up here next year as a full-timer.
Yeah. Do you think keeping Rempe, like, that's where he needs to be the rest of the season? Like, don't worry about bringing him back up.
No, I think he's going to be. I think he's going to be a bouncing ball. I think he's going to spend some time down there. I think injuries are going to happen. I think he's going to be brought up. But there's nothing wrong with going down. Like look at Brendan Ottman. He's a not first overall, but he's a first round draft pick. He spent the last 2 years in Hartford just about full time. I think he's played about 5 games for the Rangers.
Yeah.
You're not down there because you stink. You are down there to mature and get better, which you will, and then you'll eventually make your way up to. I know. It's easier said than done. A lot of guys don't make it out of the AHL, but then if you have the talent, which we know Rempe does, which we're pretty confident Ottman does as well, you will make it out of the AHL.
Yeah,
so
that's fair.
Go down there, mature, get used to the speed, and then come up and play. Turn some heads.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on the way the season has went? About 3 weeks in, a little over, I guess, over 3 weeks or so into the season. Any final thoughts across the board from anybody before we head out today?
I don't have anything.
No, just happy that Hutch is back. Slowly getting into the thick of things. It was a tough transition for me personally. Coming into it, I was in like full-blown football mode, but now that things are starting to settle and the leaves are starting to fall, I think it's just about hockey season.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty much just Vegas is a wagon. with some former Blues guys.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's like we don't, the song "We Don't Talk About Bruno." It's "We Don't Talk About Vegas." So yeah, that's how it is. So we'll wrap things up today. Thanks for joining us. My name is Brandon, it's Jerry, Aaron, and the other Brandon down here in the other corner. Dude, this gets me every time. There we go. Every time. So we'll see you on the next episode of the 5 Hole here on Variety Sports Network. Thanks for tuning in, and have yourself a wonderful Sunday.
Oh, yeah.